Hey folks, what's going on? This is Moot Davis, and this is another episode of the Hold My Hat podcast. I'm coming to you live from the wilds of Pennsylvania, out camping tonight, waiting for my buddy to show up. He's coming up from D.C., my buddy Kyle from high school, and tomorrow we're doing a bit of a training rucksack march, because we've both entered into this thing called the Fan Dance, which is a 15-mile rucksack mountain race in Wales, and that's coming up July 6th. So that's where I'll be in early July over in Wales. Anyway, last week when I was home, I had the chance to sit down with the formidable, the ultra cool, and the really super sweet Mr. Kenny Vaughan, guitar player extraordinaire, and he produced a couple albums of mine, and also guided me along the way when I first got hooked up with Pete Anderson. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll see you on the other side. Later.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, buddy. I'm doing real good.
Playing tonight?
That's playing cool. Tonight, yeah. Play on Friday. And
where do you play Friday?
A joint called Rawhides in Rayon City.
Rayon City, yeah.
Yeah.
Out there by the
just across the bridge.
What do they call it? Lakes. I can't remember what they call it out there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the lake is, but I doubt you want to swim in it. So, but yeah, Rayon City.
Yeah.
Should be.
What a cool name for a place.
Yeah.
Rayon City. It's like, wow. I remember when I first drove by there, I was like, oh, wow, it's Rayon City, man.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But, doing that.
A lot of biker kind of folks out there.
It seems like it, yeah. It seems like it's a biker hangout, so.
I had to go over there to Lakewood, I guess it's called.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a short little strip there.
Yeah.
And it's just like I was looking for the guy's place. I'm driving along and past a fantastic biker bar.
Yeah.
With people sitting out on picnic tables. It was completely biker trash all the way.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it was like you could make a movie without having to do anything.
Right.
Just okay.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to go to wardrobe. Everybody's got it. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I live over on the west side, and there's nothing like that over on my side of town.
Yeah. Well, you might be lucky.
Well, it's different.
Yeah, for sure.
I like bikers.
Yeah. Seem to be good people.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate you coming and taking the time to do this.
Sure, man.
And, man, just a laid-back thing. I'll just, where are you from originally?
I was born in Bartlesville, Oklahoma in 1954. And about 57, my parents moved back to Denver, where my dad was from.
Okay.
And specifically Littleton, which was on the south end of town. Just didn't know where Denver began and Englewood began, and Englewood bled into Littleton, but it was the end of the south end at the time.
Okay.
But it was he had lived there prior to going into World War II, and when he got out, he married my mom, who was from Missouri, and I was born in '54. My sister was born in '57 up in Littleton there, and I lived there. My parents moved away when I was 18. They moved to Kansas, and I was already playing music, and I'd already been kicked out of high school for having long hair.
Perfect.
And they told me, they accused me of selling drugs. Well, I never sold drugs. I bought drugs.
Right.
I smoked drugs.
Right.
Took drugs, but I never, ever sold drugs, But the guy really didn't like me, and he had it out for me. He wanted to get rid of me.
Right.
He didn't like anything about me. And he eventually got fired from his job after he got rid of me, but that's another story.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of left on my own there in Denver, and I started playing, I was playing already. I was playing in a lot of different kinds of bands. I was playing in at that time I had a group that I was working with a lot that played. There was a guitar player from Texas. He was kind of a Texas blues guy, but he was also into funky music, which was kind of popular in the early to mid 70s.
Yeah.
and so we were playing lots of bars, even some biker bars, and we were playing some funky music and some blues music, and they were really good. Those guys were really great, and I played guitar and bass in that band because the guitar player was a really good guitar player, so he and I would switch off on the bass. He had an old Fender bass, and we would just toss it back and forth.
That's awesome.
And then I also had a super progressive jazz group that I played in that was really fun because we were playing, at the time it would have been almost considered avant-garde music. It wasn't like fusion, because this was in the pre-fusion era,
right,
where they hadn't really assigned a name to it, but we were hip to, Miles Davis Bitches Brew and Miles Davis On the Corner and Miles Davis Big Fun, all those records that came out, with where he told the keyboard players they couldn't play acoustic piano, they had to play electric pianos, and
right,
and he hired John McLaughlin to come in and play electric guitar, and even had a song called John McLaughlin on it. So that was pretty new for everyone to what he did on that record. It was like, what is this? This is like outer space music. It was a whole new way of looking at jazz, and it was a kind of tumultuous to the jazz world when he released those records.
Okay.
A lot of people weren't very happy about it, but it changed the face of popular music in a big way.
Yeah.
And so we were doing a lot of that kind of stuff, and Carla Bley tunes and all that kind of stuff, and there was only one joint where we could play, so we weren't making any money, and I was trying to make a living, playing in, some bands and just jobbing around. I started playing with a guy that was kind of playing country music in a lounge that was close by where I lived. And then I discovered these old guys. One day I was walking down the street there was this place called the Oasis Lounge. And it was an old folks drinking place.
Yeah.
Typical, beer lounge kind of place, where if you went in there at 6 a.m, there'd be about 6 guys on bar stools watching the Today Show drinking beer.
Right.
They were all like 75 or 80 years old, old men.
Yeah.
But at night they had, sometimes they'd have music, and I didn't know much about it, but I was walking by one night and I was like, what is that? This is amazing. And I walked in and there was these old guys playing country music, and the guitar player was just off the hook.
Yeah.
He was a monster, and I was like, I had never seen anybody play like this guy. I've heard people play like this on records, but there he was doing it in front of me, and the leader was this old white-haired guy that was a singer and played bass, and he was really funny and really good, deep voice,
Yeah.
And he'd actually had made records in Nashville in the 60s, truck driving records and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he was really good, and he was the leader. And so the first night I was in there, I was just sitting over there, and he comes up, they took a break, he says, son, you're going to get your ass kicked in here looking like that. I said, you better move a little closer to the stage. You must be a musician. I said, yeah. He said, guitar player? I said, yeah. He said, you're digging on Chuck, aren't you? I said, yeah. I said, I'm pretty much in awe of Chuck. So I went back again and sat there and watched, and Dewey, the lead guy, got my number. And he asked me to get up and play a song, but they had 2 guitar players, and so I used and the other guy was really good too, but not as good as Chuck.
Right.
And so I got up and used the other guy's guitar, and we played some song. I don't even remember what,
Yeah.
This is in the 70s, and so he ended up calling me, and so I kind of started working around the old country scene, and I found this whole other world of people that I didn't know about. I knew a lot of musicians in Denver at that time and was pretty hip to the whole scene, but I didn't know about this really large old school country music world. And the deal was there was all these clubs over on West 44th Street on the west side of Denver. There was like 4 pretty prominent night spots that had country music 7 nights a week.
Yeah.
And the deal was you played 5 sets a night, and you got paid like $200 a week, which for me was a lot of money.
Yeah.
in the 70s, you know, for me to be able to make $200 a week, I was like, yeah, sign me up. And the cool thing about that was Dewey would he knew that I wasn't one of them, and I was never going to be one of them, but he liked the way I played, and he appreciated that I, made a big effort to learn the music and play it correctly, as opposed to playing it like some young fellow who was
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I made an effort to try and play it like they would have played it in 1953 or whatever,
Yeah.
which was great. I really enjoyed it because I actually liked the country music from 1946 to 1955. That was what really got me.
Yeah.
I thought that's cool music. Like Hank Williams to me was like rock and roll.
Yeah. Yeah.
And little Jimmy Dickens was like, what's that?
Yeah.
From outer space, really digging on it. And so I was into it, and my friends were like, what are you doing? Why are you playing that kind of music? I was like, because these guys are amazing, man. I'm learning all this stuff. It's really great. I'm making money. But the cool thing was, if I had a gig with one of my other bands, I could call Dewey and say, hey, I got a gig on Saturday night. He said, well, who can you send in? And I said, well, I got Gary to come in and play that night. He said, okay, I'll see you on Monday night.
Nice. Yeah.
And be careful, son.
Yeah.
So he was really pliable, and so that worked out really well for me. And that's kind of how I got into being a country guitar player, because the whole thing about it is my friends at that time that were still trying to be professional musicians, they got into this top 40 kind of business where they were playing the Holiday Inn circuit. Mm-hmm. And back in those days, it was you were supposed to play what was on the radio for the dancers at the Holiday Inn bar. Every Holiday Inn had a bar with a dance floor and a lounge kind of thing. And so they'd end up, oh, well, what are you guys doing this week? Well, we're going to North Platte, Nebraska for 2 weeks, and then we're going over to some Casper, Wyoming for 2 weeks. Right. And I'm like, what do you do? And they said, well, we got a couple of motel rooms because we're playing at the Holiday Inn, and we play 6 nights a week, and and we wear uniforms and play what's on the top 40 radio. And that sounded like going to prison to me. Right. It was like, oh my God, that sounds horrible, because I didn't like what was going on the radio anyway. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to play what the popular music of the day was for the the top 40 thing. It just sounded like, oh my God, that sounds horrible. Yeah. It's like, oof. That's not. I didn't get to play guitar to do that. Right. So I didn't have to travel. Yeah. I could stay in town, and I started where the funky band, the funky blues band, was really fun to play with, and there was a guy that lived next door to them who was a sort of an amateur drummer, and kind of a crazy, wild, artistic kind of wild man, and really intelligent fellow. And he would hang around and watch us rehearse, and he was kind of our fan, and he'd go watch my jazz band, and so one day he approached me and he said, hey, you want to go play a party with my band? And I said, what band is that? And he said, oh, it's just a little party band, man. It's nothing. We just play like 60s rock and roll and like punk rock 60s kind of stuff. Like they played Psychotic Reaction by the Count Five, and Hey Little Girl by the Syndicate of Sound, and old just party records, kind of like we played Louie and just that kind of stuff, that trashy kind of garage rock, if you will. And I had a really good time. We made a lot of money at this party, and so I said, oh, that's great. He said, let's start a band, man, come on. And I was like, oh yeah, well, and so I kept playing with those guys, and we eventually started writing songs. And our bass player decided we were getting too serious. He was really allergic to work of any kind, and it became work for him. So he dropped out, and we got a friend of mine to play my bass. I had a bass and my bass amp, and so he was a guitar player, but he came in and played bass for us, and me and the drummer started writing all these tunes. Okay. And then about that time, there was in 1976 and 77, there was this punk rock explosion out of New York and London. That, you know, there was like the Ramones and the Sex Pistols and Television and the Clash and all these people that we were reading about, but you didn't hear them on any radio anywhere. You know, that was not going to happen. But you had to go down to the one store in town that had all that stuff, and there was where all these people congregated that were into all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up playing at that party for that record store. And suddenly we were the darlings of the new punk rock scene. Yeah. Even though we weren't really punks and we were writing our own songs, but they liked it and we became popular, and we ended up moving to Chicago, and we played there for a while and ended up living in New York. And unfortunately my band got into heroin and it destroyed the band, you know. I watched it crumble beneath me, and I wound up back in Denver playing.
What year is this?
We were living in Chicago 78 and 79, and then we were living in New York in 80. And I had to, you know, bail it, you know, and go back to Denver because my guys were just, they two of them wound up in Hollywood. Yeah. And I went out there with them, but I didn't dig their scene. They were too far into drugs. And that was kind of their thing, you know, and it was like, well, this isn't my thing. Yeah. I mean, I didn't have any problem with drugs. Right. I did, you know, but I was more interested in music. You know? Yeah. And I was, you know, had to maintain my musical ability and all that kind of stuff. So I should have stayed out there, but I didn't. You know, I was like, I couldn't handle what was going on. And I went back to Denver, hung out, and played 6 nights a week in country bars, and, you know, everything was going along pretty good. And I wound up at this biker bar that was, let's say, how can I put this? I believe it was a money laundering operation for a guy who was selling massive amounts of illegal things. Sure. Yeah. And it was one of those things like you go into the bathroom and 5 bikers would pull out their vial, like, okay, you want a bump, man? Yeah. You want a bump? Come on, take a bump. You know, I was like, oh. And all the liquor was free. And the guy loved my band. Yeah. So he overpaid us. He paid us twice what, you know, he was supposed to pay us. And it was like, so it was like the best gig in town, but it was a nightmare, you know, because it was like contraband everywhere. Right. It was nothing but bad people, but who were pretty interesting, you know, because they were bad people who were making money. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they weren't stupid people. They were just not the kind of people that you really wanted to be around a lot, because of, you know, you never knew what the hell was going to happen. You know. Right. And you know, the guns and girls and, you know, stuff and drugs and oh my God. So that went on for a couple of years, and I couldn't afford to quit because you couldn't get a better paying gig in town. Yeah. It was double what all the other gigs were. So I was like, well, you know, and it was a great band. Yeah. Really fun. But, you know, there was, you know, it wasn't a good situation for me. Right. Ultimately, and I'm laying in bed one afternoon, you know, because I was always up late every night, and and the phone rang, and it was a friend of mine calling who had been living in L.A. I'd played with him out in Denver, and he'd been living out in L.A., and he called me, and he said he was in Nashville, and that he was playing a gig, a 3-week tour opening for the country band named Alabama. Mm-hmm. And they needed a guitar player because they just fired their guitar player. And I said, well, tell me more. And I said, what does it pay? And he told me, he says, here's the catch. I said, what's the catch? He says, rehearsal's the day after tomorrow. And I said, okay. So I loaded my stuff in my car and I drove to Nashville. I called, you know, the guys, and I said, hey guys, you're gonna have to get somebody else to play this week because I'm taking a trip to Nashville. I'll be back in about 3 or 4 weeks. This tour is going to be 3 weeks long. You know, but I never went back. That's amazing. I just stayed here because, you know, I landed here not knowing anything. I'd never been to the South. Right. You know, I was like, it sounded like a field trip to me. Oh, that'll be fun. Go to the South. see Nashville. Yeah, Music City. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be cool. And so I met everybody in town basically the first week, and I just stayed here.
Yeah.
And I just kept on working. So
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
Just passing through. That was 1987 when I moved here. And
That's crazy.
yeah.
That's
I'm still
crazy.
here.
Going back, were your parents musical?
No, but my father, bless his heart, was a visual artist by trade.
Okay.
And he was quite good with a lot of different mediums, and great guy. But he was a jazz buff. He
Right.
listened to jazz. Also, I'm 3 years old. I'm listening to John Coltrane and
Yeah.
Charlie Parker, and, Tony Bennett and Anita O'Day and Peggy Lee, Woody Herman, Count Basie,
Yeah.
Jimmy Smith. I could hum Kenny Burrell's guitar solo on Jimmy Smith's organ grinder swing way before I
Right.
before I ever knew what a guitar was. You
Yeah.
know, I knew how the solo went. And but he had this massive record collection, a big stereo, and so when I told him I wanted to play guitar in 1964, when the Beatles played on Ed Sullivan in February 1964, it's like the light bulb went on my head. It's like, I gotta get on this. This is where it's at, man. I dig with these guys and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later they had the Rolling Stones on, and a couple of weeks after that they had the Kinks on. I was like, holy shit.
Right. The whole British Invasion.
The Animals.
Yeah.
The Animals, the Kinks, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles. Those four were just like, getting sucker punched. So I kept bugging my dad about a guitar, and he said, well, my friend Johnny's a really good guitar player. I'll take you down to watch him some night. He plays on Saturday nights down at Shaner's, this tiny little nightclub right in the heart of downtown Denver. So we go down there, and his friend Johnny turns out to be Johnny Smith, the famous jazz guitar player,
Right.
who had run the NBC orchestra in the 50s, because back in the 50s they hadn't used tape yet for TV programs. They had live orchestras on all the...
Okay.
Like if you watched a drama, it was a live orchestra playing the music.
Yeah.
Or if you watched, a variety show, it was always a live band, playing everything. There was no tape yet.
Yeah.
They weren't using tape to behind the television shows. It was actually real musicians playing.
Yeah.
And so TV scale back then was really high. So those guys were, Johnny was they had two directors. Toscanini did all the classical stuff, and Johnny Smith did all the pop stuff. So he was working 7 days a week as a leader. He was set.
Yeah.
And he was really a straight guy. I don't think I think he would occasionally have like half a shot of whiskey before he went on. Mm-hmm. But he was like a Secret Service agent looking guy.
Yeah.
He was really square looking and really polite and quiet and nice.
Yeah.
And was at that time considered to be the world's most advanced technician on the jazz guitar. Like his chordal voicings were close harmony piano voicings where you really had to stretch a lot, and his ballad work was just insane. It was just crazy how good he was.
Yeah.
And he wrote instruction books, and he was highly regarded amongst all the other jazz guitar players as kind of the guy.
Yeah.
That they all had learned a lot from, and he was a pioneer as far as his technical abilities and the way he played the guitar. He was very advanced, and so that was my first experience, with the guitar was from him,
Yeah.
And I never studied with him, but I was friends with him, and I ended up when I was 17, I studied a little bit with a very young Bill Frisell, who was from Denver.
Yeah.
And I studied with him for about 2.5 months, and I learned a whole lot from him.
Right.
He was really a good teacher for me. And one day I went in for a lesson, and he said, "Hey, man, this is going to be our last lesson." I said, "What's going on, dude?" And he said, "I got to get out of Denver, man. I got to go to New York. I'm going to die if I stay here."
Yeah.
He was probably 4 years older than me. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I can dig that." So, 2 years later, he was like on every jazz record coming out of New York.
It's crazy.
Wow.
It's crazy.
He's still doing it,
Yeah.
We're still friends, but Yeah, that was really fortunate for me. I walked into my music store one day, Melody Music in Inglewood. It was where I bought everything, and there was this hippie sitting over in the corner playing guitar, and I went up to the counter and said, "Who the hell is that guy, man? Who is that?" "Oh, that's my new guitar instructor, Bill Frisell." And I was like, "Sign me up." And I was too shy to go over and talk to him. I met him when I was there at my first lesson, and he was really quiet and shy and kind of, but I ended up learning a lot from him.
Yeah.
He kind of opened up my knowledge of the fretboard and how to apply it and how to, play through jazz tunes and, what to do and what not to do and what to throw away and what to keep and, the important parts and all that kind of stuff. So, in fact, even to this day, I will, I'll be maybe working on a song or something or arrangement or something. I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, that's what Bill was trying to tell me."
It's wild, yeah.
Yeah. Over 50 years later, I'm still using the knowledge that he gave me, and I'm still finding new things,
Yeah.
Yeah, in there, yeah.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, I was really lucky. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I got to play. But, I didn't really want to be a jazz guitar player per se, but since I grew up with that stuff in my head, from listening to it all the time as a kid, those were the harmonies I heard in my head, so I wanted to know what it was. And I liked it, like being able to sit down and play one of those tunes, it's kind of like fun.
Right.
Hey, this is cool, yeah. And so it was a really good thing for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I remember just, in times we've worked together and we were just talking when we weren't doing anything, and you were telling me that, if I remember correctly, that, you had seen all these historic bands.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can you, who were the ones that influenced you the most? Or?
Well, the first one I saw was the Rolling Stones. I saw them at the Auditorium Arena where they were singing through the boxing announcers' speakers up in the ceiling,
Yeah.
like horns.
Yeah.
And there were 2 microphones on stage. They were in the round.
Okay.
It was like a in the round kind of thing. And they probably made it 25 minutes before the cops had to shut it down because the teenage girls, this would probably been late 65, early 66, and the teenage girls were still, at that time, out of control for the Stones.
Right.
It was like they were still the young Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
And it was just mayhem. And there was 2 microphones on stage, one for Mick and one for whoever was going to sing harmony.
Right.
No mics on the instruments.
Yeah.
On the drums or anything. There's just like 3 guitar amps, 2 microphones, and the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
No light show, no.
Right.
There was maybe one spotlight on the stage. That was it. Just stark. But it was like Technicolor when they came on. It's like, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
They were just too cool. And cops had to form a wedge to get them off because they were in the round. They had to walk through the crowd. And it was like a military operation watching it from the audience.
Yeah.
We were kind of sitting up so we could kind of see what was going on. It was mayhem.
Yeah.
They just had to stop.
Yeah.
The cops had to get them out of there. And then the next show I saw was in August of '66. It was the Lovin' Spoonful. And their big hit was Summer in the City was their big hit at that particular time. It was up on the top of the charts.
Yeah.
And I had... let me see, in '66 was the same year I got my first guitar. So I had a Fender Telecaster that I bought I had a paper route, and my dad helped me out. We bought it from Johnny Smith Music. He had a music store down in Colorado Springs.
Right.
And he sold Gibson guitars and Fender guitars, and had this guy that was showing me some stuff, and I wanted to buy a Fender Jaguar, and he said, no. He said, do not buy a Fender Jaguar.
Right.
I said, why not, man? That's the best one they make, he says. And I had a copy of Having a Rave Up with the Yardbirds in my bedroom here where he would come over and give me lessons.
Yeah.
And he points to Jeff Beck. I didn't even know Jeff Beck's name, but
Right.
I knew that's the guy that played all the cool stuff.
Right.
He points to him and he says, if you want to sound like that guy, you're never going to sound like that with a Jaguar. You got to get a Telecaster. I was like, okay, well, it's cheaper. I'm closer to that. You know, I think we paid like less than $200 for the brand new guitar in the case. You know?
Right.
He gave us a deal.
Yeah.
But still, you know.
And was it just like a Blackguard butterscotch?
No, it was a White Guard.
White,
This is
okay.
66.
Okay.
White Guard, just standard
Yeah.
Army issue Fender Telecaster, you know. But served me well, and thank goodness my friend was right.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't buy a Jaguar.
Yeah.
It was great for surf music, but not for what was to come.
Yeah.
Because Jeff was really the first guy that started making noises on his guitar, you know.
Yeah.
It was kind of like he listened to Les Paul, you know, and those Les Paul Mary Ford records with all the multi-track guitars and the fast playing.
Yeah.
It's like he melded that with Bo Diddley, who was, you know, making noise on his guitar. You know, it was like running his fingers up and down the string. You know, he had a song called Mumbling Guitar.
Right.
And it just went. You know, just like noise.
Yeah.
And Jeff, like, you know, the light bulb went off in his head, so he took it a step further, you know, and started turning up the amp and using a fuzz box, you know, fuzz tone, and making these crazy sounds and feedback and, you know, it's, you know, sound effects. And I was like, wow, I like this guy.
Yeah.
He's a demon. I'll never forget when the Yardbirds played on Shindig in '66, and I was watching it, you know, and they played "I'm a Man," and at the end of "I'm a Man," they had this kind of rave up, kind of fast thing that they did, where it was just on one chord, and Jeff would make all these noises, and it was kind of pretty edgy. And I'm watching him do this live on TV, and the credits are rolling. It's the end of the show. And as the credits are rolling, he looks in the camera and he holds his guitar up by the neck, and he produces like a cigarette lighter and starts running it up and down the strings. And I was like, suddenly the whole world went from black and white to Technicolor right there. I was like, you can't do that, but he's doing it. Whoa! You know, and the band's raging, and the guitar is no longer playing notes; it's just playing sound effects. And I'm like, and then it went. That was it. You know, it stopped. You know, I was like, what just happened, man? What was that? It was like, you know, and then like a year later, I went to see the Doors, and that was the young, clean-cut, film student, UCLA Doors, those guys, you know. Yeah. And my best friend's older sister went out with the guy that did the light show at this joint. It was a hippie club. Okay. It was had like, you know, light show on 3 walls, you know, and, you know, hippie light show it had high ceiling and all ages. So it was just a bunch of white kids. Yeah. Would go in there to watch whoever they booked. Yeah. And so we spent it was open for 18 months, so we saw a lot of people in there. But the first show I saw there was the Doors show, and so I'm up in the band room with, you know, my best friend and his older sister, and she's going up with the light show guy, and Jim Morrison and Ray Manzarek from the Doors walked in with their girlfriends, you know, and they're kind of shy, and they asked me if I could get them 2 Cokes. You know, so I did. I looked like Ernie on My 3 Sons, you know, and I come back, you know. I didn't say a word. I just handed him the Cokes, and Ray pulls out this tiny little bottle of whiskey and pours a little bit in Jim's Coke, a little bit in his Coke, and they're really nicely dressed, you know, clean cut, and, you know, they're polite and quiet and kind of didn't say much, you know, and they shared, each guy shared a Coke with his girlfriend, you know, quiet, you know, nice, pretty girls dressed up nice. But they went out and played. Captain Beefheart was the opener. I watched Captain Beefheart, and that was great because it was the Sunset Strip blues band version of his. Okay. You know, so they didn't really play a lot of stuff from his first album. Safe as Milk. They only played a couple of songs. It was mostly what they were playing in the nightclub, which was Chicago blues.
Yeah.
Muddy Waters tunes and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
But they amped it up a little bit. But they looked like good fellas. They were all dressed up in gangster kind of suits with wide lapels and fedoras.
Right.
That was their thing. They didn't look like hippies at all.
Yeah.
They were very stark and sort of dark.
Yeah.
And then the Doors came out playing their bossa nova beat.
Yeah.
They were like a little jazz band backing up this crazy singer.
Yeah.
He went from being a real shy guy to just put on a great show. It was a great show.
Yeah.
But between bands, there was a DJ and this giant sound system. The first time I ever seen a big sound system. And a DJ was playing music, and he said, "Now here's a new song off the new Jimi Hendrix album that just came out yesterday." And I think he put on Foxy Lady, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever, it was pretty loud, and me and my friend were like, "What is this?" So the next day, we rode our bikes up to the shopping center, to the J.C. Penney, where we bought all our records, and there was the record cover, and I'm looking at this record cover, and there's three guys, and the guy in the middle standing in front of the other two is black guy, and then the other two guys have, like frizzed out, permed up hair, and all these wild clothes on, and I'm thinking, so I bought the record, I take it home and play it, and I'm figuring, well, the black guy's singing, so he must be the bass player. And because, it never dawned on me that a black guy would play guitar like that.
Right.
And with all those wild sounds.
Yeah.
It just would sound otherworldly. Like, I'd never heard anything like it.
Right.
It was like hearing that for the first time when there was nothing to prepare you for. It was just like shock,
Yeah.
And it was really good, and I was like, man, I like this music. And then I found out he was coming to town like a week later. So we went to the Regis College field house where they played basketball in. And the Soft Machine was the opening band, who were great. They were a little avant-garde jazz band from Canterbury. They were the guys that started the Canterbury scene in south of London there. And that was kind of where all the arty, that's where Pink Floyd came out of that same scene.
Yeah.
But the Soft Machines were much more advanced and played much more jazzy, groovy music than anybody else ever did down there. Mm-hmm. They were really great. I mean, just off the charts good, wicked good musicians. And obviously they'd been listening to, John Coltrane and that kind of stuff a lot, and reading William Burroughs and that kind of stuff, because their lyrics were like really different.
Yeah.
Very much influenced by the beat poetry thing.
Yeah.
Way more than anybody else.
Right.
They were much more intellectual. Not really. They weren't going up after commercial success, but Jimmy loved him. That's why he brought him over for his tours. I saw him twice with Jimmy, but when he came out, he played this little quiet instrumental, and a short little thing. And Mitchell's playing like jazz on the drums, and not playing very loud, and then all of a sudden at the end of the song he just starts turning up, and then all hell broke loose. Yes, yeah. It was like, then he went into the real Jimi Hendrix show. It was like, wow! He's playing a upside down Stratocaster left-handed, and I'm just like, what in the world how did he get those sounds? What is he doing? We tried to go down to the stage to look at his pedals. He had two pedals he was using. We were trying to identify what we were seeing. And looking at his amps, it's like, what is this? And then we saw him again the following summer. And the following summer after that, I saw him 3 times.
Right.
67, 68, and 69.
Wow. And what were the pedals that he was using? He
had a Dallas Arbiter fuzz tone, which I still use today.
Yeah.
And he had a Vox Crybaby wah-wah pedal. Okay. And I still have both of mine that I bought back in those days. Yeah. I still have them both. Got the little carrying bag for the Vox. Still have it. Vox pedal carrying bag. Had a little handle on it. It said Vox. The little snap thing to close the thing shut.
Right.
It's great.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw, who else did I see? Those at the Family Dog. I saw Janis Joplin with Big Brother and the Holding Company. They were really good.
Yeah.
Because most people don't realize that band. She was only the lead singer on about half of the songs. Mm-hmm. Sam Andrew III was the other lead singer, but they were like a soul band. They had all these background harmonies, and they were very put together and well rehearsed and tight. They weren't ragged at all. I thought they were going to be. I didn't realize what a soul band they were.
Right.
Almost like a show band or something.
Yeah.
But she was really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
And wild. Just like shaking the tambourine, just like going crazy and putting on a real show. Like, wow. And I saw Howlin' Wolf.
Mm-hmm. How was that?
That was crazy because he was playing this place, with all these white kids.
Yeah.
And it dawned on me later in life what was really going on, because Howlin' Wolf was pretty. He was a scary figure just to look at him.
Right.
When his voice, he was like Jerry Lee Lewis kind of.
Yeah.
Just like you kind of like, wow, this guy's a force of nature.
Yeah.
And his band was the same guys that are in the Howlin' Wolf movie. Every one of them. If you see the Howlin' Wolf movie, those are the guys that I saw. Hubert Sumlin on guitar.
Yeah.
And Howlin' Wolf got down on he's laying on the stage doing "I'm 300 Pounds of Heavenly Joy"
right?
To these white girls, and they start screaming and throwing their bras at him. Wow. Like these are like 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old girls, white girls.
Yeah.
And I like and that guy, the sax player, I can't remember his name. He keeps moving his microphone closer to the back of the stage and looking at Wolf like he's got this look like, this guy's got to get us killed. Because they were all black guys. Yeah. And this is 1968.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they probably were on their way from Chicago to San Francisco, where they could play a lot, where they could play for white kids and make a lot of money.
Yeah.
That was new to them. They were mystified as to why white people would come see them all of a sudden out of nowhere. It was kids that had listened to the Rolling Stones were picking up on,
sure,
oh, this is the guy that they got that song from. And so but Wolf went burlesque all the way. He did his whole nightclub routine like he would have done on the south side of Chicago on a Saturday night for the patrons in his neighborhood club. And it was risque. Yeah. Got right up against it. Yeah. But the fact that the girls were throwing their bras and screaming and losing it, you could see the guys were really nervous on stage, thinking, either we're going to get killed or we're going to end up in jail. One of the two. They had that, but nothing happened, and
Too funny.
Yeah.
Too funny.
I know, but that was really an eye opener
to
see that guy. It was just like, wow. What is this stuff? This is so good.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And who else did I see out there? My mom I was only 14. My mom and dad wouldn't let me go out all the time. Right. And the night the Buffalo Springfield played, they wouldn't let me leave. So I missed that one. Yeah. That's one that I'm still kicking myself for not going. Yeah. See that show. Yeah. That would have been good. Because Buffalo Springfield didn't really play very much. Right. They were not together very long. Right. But they were really cool. Yeah. Yeah. Young Steve Stills. Yeah. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So how long was it before you were just watching these bands to the point where you started playing with sort of bands of that ilk? Because I think
in early '67, I got my guitar in August of '66 and immediately started learning how to play it, and did nothing else pretty much. Stayed in my room and played guitar all the time. Later on I guess it was that winter sometime, a guy knocked on my front door, and he was a guy that just moved in down the street. He was 3 years older than me, and he said, "I hear you play guitar." I said, yeah. And he says, well, I play bass. Let's get together and play. So we got together and started, just the two of us. And then he was really nice. And I think the first two songs we played were In the Midnight Hour and Little Black Egg by the, what's the name of that band? The Nightcrawlers. Mm-hmm. It was a regional hit in the Northeast. And he brought it with him from Ohio. He came from Ohio, and I'd never heard the record. He had the single. I said, let's play this. It's really easy. It's a cool little song called Little Black Egg. So those are the first two songs I played. Mm-hmm. And then with someone else.
Yeah.
You know? And he was really good. And then like weeks later after that, he showed up at my door with 3 other kids. And they were all his age. All 3 years older than me, and they said, hey, we're starting a band, come on, you need to be our guitar player, you know.
Yeah.
And so we had 2 guitars, bass, drums, and a guy that sang, and we started playing. And it was an all Catholic neighborhood that I grew up in. Mm-hmm. So we played like the Catholic youth organization dances a lot, you know, in the basement of the church.
Yeah.
And which was great. And we started playing in battle. There was a lot of battle of the bands back in those days that were really kind of big deals.
Yeah.
They were like, they'd have them all over town, you know, and then the winners would go to the next level, you know, and that kind of stuff. So we would enter those things and we'd meet other musicians and kind of get to know who was good in town. And there was a lot, you know, the Denver music scene at that time was really happening.
Right.
Like there was really a good jazz scene. And there was also a really good garage punk rock sort of kids, you know, like bands that were between the ages of 15 and 20, playing in like 3-2 beer joints where you only had to be 18 to get in.
Yeah.
And I eventually wound up getting a fake ID, you know, and which made it okay for me to get around and play in places where they serve beer.
Yeah.
And that was good for me.
Yeah.
So, because they were pretty strict back in those days about, you know, underage kids weren't allowed in bars. You know.
Guitar player.
Even if they were, even if they were on stage, you didn't, you know. But it was easy to get a fake ID. I had one. I used it till I was 21. I used it when I went into the Oasis to see.
Too funny.
Those guys.
Yeah. How did you? So when you came to Nashville, how long was it before you were playing with like Lucinda Williams and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, it was years. I moved here in '87, and I started working with different people, and I was lucky. I had real good gigs, and they were all road gigs, but I was, you know, really lucky. And I didn't really get out and play around town until the mid '90s. And I started working with Greg Gehring in the back room at Tootsie's. Yep. There was no roof over the back, so he could do all ages shows. And he was playing that first wave of country music. He cut it off about 55. Like, you know, he wasn't going to play any Waylon Jennings or Willie Nelson or that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know? No Merle Haggard, that wasn't his scene. He was playing the real thing from, you know, 46 to 56. So, but he also played a lot of bluegrass stuff. But he didn't play a bluegrass style, but he had been working for Jimmy Martin and the Sunny Mountain Boys playing fiddle. Okay. So he had that influence, especially with the way he performed. He took a lot from Jimmy, just his stage presence and, you know. And so it was all these kids watching us and music people. And that's how I met Lucinda. That was in 94, 95. Okay. And she used to come down to all our shows and sit right in front because she was enamored with Greg. She would just, you know, sit there and watch him like, whoa, this guy's from outer space, you know. Yeah. And we would go to parties afterwards, and that's how I got to know her. And then when she finished her Car Wheels on a Gravel Road record, which she recorded in Nashville, she was just staying in Nashville. She wasn't living here. But Steve Earle and Ray Kennedy produced that album. And when she finally got done, she'd fired her guitar player, Gerf Morlix, who was kind of like her Keith Richards. Right. He was kind of like the architect of her sound, and she fired him in the middle of the record. and had Buddy Miller come in and re-record the same guitar parts, basically, or his version of them, but it was kind of a messy situation.
Yeah.
And I was busy. She'd asked me to join her band, but I was already obligated to do some other stuff. So I was kind of glad, because I didn't want to be the Where's Gerf guy.
Right.
Because, all of us who were fans of hers kind of thought of them as a duo, in some ways.
Yeah.
Because he was so he's such a prominent part of her musical identity on those records. And it's, but then when I became available, her manager kept hounding me, and he was a great manager, the best manager ever, and came through Nashville since I've been here.
Yeah. And
he's unfortunately deceased, but he was the best. Frank Collari, man, what a great manager. Just fantastic. It's really good.
Yeah.
He was the guy that, I think he had, he broke Marilyn Manson originally, early on, and he'd been a DJ in New York, in the dance music scene there when it was really wild in the 70s, and he was a music guy, a music lover, and really a good businessman, a smart guy, and he kind of made Lucinda, he told me how it was going to work, what we were going to do, and he stayed with it. He made it happen. He was a great manager, man. Such a good manager. So I played with her from like 97, 98, 99.
Yeah.
And we played all the time. I mean, we were out constantly. And we started in a van and with me and her bass player, and then we had another guitar player, and then we finally got a drummer and a bus, and wound up at the end of my stay with her, did 32 nights opening for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Wow. What was that like?
It was great.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I was really lucky. Tom and Mike decided that they liked me.
Right.
And so they always had their own dressing room. Tom and Mike had their own dressing room. And they always hung out together, just those two guys. But for whatever reason, I was the third guy in the dressing room all the time, hanging out, talking about guitars and shit.
Yeah.
Really nice, kind of quiet, shy guys from Florida, shy hippies from Florida who, the more I got to know them, the more I realized that they felt like they didn't fit anywhere in this world.
Yeah.
Like they weren't a part of any scene. They were fans of the same stuff I liked.
Yeah.
We bonded over Bob Dylan and the Rolling Stones and that kind of stuff, and Lucinda. They loved Lucinda. And they didn't like the same stuff I didn't like. They liked the same stuff I liked, and we just were pals, and so it was really a good experience for me to have those guys be my pal, guitar buddies,
Yeah.
They're really nice guys.
What was it like being around Lucinda and Tom in particular, just as far as like their songwriting stuff? Did that rub off on you? Because you write songs as well,
Yeah, I don't know how much it rubbed off on me, but man, they were real writers.
Yeah.
I'd worked with a lot of, Nashville songwriters, but these people were way more deep than that. And I was like, God, these guys are into it.
Yeah.
And Lucinda, her father was a poet and a professor. He taught poetry and those kind of things. And I think he was friends with a lot of famous poets.
Right.
Would stay at his house and stuff. I mean, she told me stories about getting ready to go to school when she was 12 years old, and Charles Bukowski would be at the kitchen table from the night before, still there, sitting there, and she would show him her poetry and her songs, and that's good. You change that to me. That's pretty good, kid. And Flannery O'Connor,
All right.
And James Dickey, I think. So, she had, and her father too.
Yeah.
Miller Williams. So she grew up with some pretty good influences that were readily available for her.
Yeah.
And obviously she absorbed them quite well.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it because it's the truth. Her father was jealous of her.
Yeah.
I saw it firsthand.
Yeah. And what'd that do to her?
Well, I'm not going to go into it.
Yeah.
Other than that,
Yeah, fair.
she had a rough childhood because of her situation with her mom and dad.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be told here.
Yeah, fair enough.
If you read her book,
Yeah.
and it's a better way to find out about that.
Fair enough.
But she's an amazing artist.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah. Killer songwriters. I mean, you know.
And I'll tell you what, man, I've worked with a lot of people on stage, but I've never, ever worked with anybody that was more intense on stage than her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she was so serious about every word she sang, because it was all real.
Yeah.
Every song happened to her.
Yeah.
You know, she's not a person that can make up a song about something.
Right.
She writes about shit that happened to her.
Yeah.
And it was so, you know, it's cathartic for her to sing these songs. And she was like, you know, she was just like, this is how it happened, you know, just like so serious about it, and it had to come out, you know. She was never anything but 100% when she hit the stage.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like she enjoyed it. She had to do it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it was. She relived it every time she would sing it. You know, so if it was something that, you know, messed up that happened, it was like you could feel it. I was like, it made you play better. You know, you're like, yeah, well, this is real.
Yeah.
This isn't like some.
Yeah.
They didn't write this at, you know, at a 1 o'clock songwriting appointment. You know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is like the real thing.
Yeah.
You know, all that other stuff is just fluff, and this is reality. This is really.
Yeah.
And that was the part of that whole experience that I took away from me as being, you know, it was really a roller coaster ride to play with her on stage. It was really fun for me. I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, she would do shit like, we'd be playing in an arena, you know, and she'd kick into a song. Stop! I can't do this. I'm sorry, everybody. Can we go on to the next song? Let's just move on. I can't do that. Now, who does that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You go to a show.
Yeah.
Who does that, man? Only Lou. She's the only person I saw that would, you know, that's how real it was to her.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And some of the guys in the band would freak out, and I was like, this is awesome. I wasn't really, I kind of felt like I was kind of separate from those other guys. Like I wasn't really in the band like they were, but I was the spectator. Yeah. And it was really fun. Yeah. I enjoyed every minute of it. It was such a great gig.
That's awesome.
And she's a wonderful person, you know. She's like a real honest person. Yeah. Honest to a fault. Yeah. Yeah, man, she was cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I was saying that Andy Gibson introduced us.
Yes.
And then I think you played with us downtown one night over at Layla's.
Yeah, I remember that well.
Yeah, and again, you were super sweet, and you gave me a piece of advice because I kept breaking guitar strings, and I think you said to me, if you play softer, you'll stop breaking strings. So I employed that, and I stopped breaking strings, But so I think we played that one gig together, and then a few months later, it might even been a half a year, I got involved with Pete Anderson.
Yeah, right.
And I remember like when Pete was like, you know, he called me and he said, you know, I want to redo the album that Andy and I just had made. Right. You know, I want you to come out here and redo it. Yeah. And I think you were the first person I called because I was terrified. Yeah. And you were real sweet to me. Like, we had only had that one interaction. It wasn't like, you know, we'd known each other, but I told you what was going on, and you were like, oh, man, it's going to be great. This is exciting, you know? I was like, I'm so scared he's just going to, like, once he sees me or meets me or, like, hears me play the guitar, like, he'll send me home, you know? Like, you're like, no. He's there for the songs, you know? So it was, I always remembered that you really kind of put me at ease and made me feel good about it.
We were talking about him last week. I was in Los Angeles making a record, and Mitch Marine was on drums.
Yeah.
James Intveld on bass.
Yeah.
And Shooter Jennings was producing.
Okay.
And who else was playing? A guy named John. I think he plays the Shooter, playing guitar.
Okay.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
But we were talking about, of course, Mitch still works with Dwight.
Yeah.
And I said, well, have you guys seen Pete? None of them. They're like, no, man, I haven't seen Pete.
Yeah.
Oh, where the hell is? I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, I haven't talked to him since 2007.
Yeah, those guys kind of we're all kind of like, when I asked, they're all like, funny you should ask. I haven't talked to him, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Backfire?
Here's hoping. But, I haven't talked to him in a long, long time. But it's funny when I got, when they finally let me go from the other option on Little Dog Records, when we'd made 2 albums together.
Is that his label?
Yeah, that was his label.
Yeah.
And, they were holding on to me for the option for the 3rd album.
Right.
And just sort of turning down all the songs I would send them.
Right.
Just kind of like,
yeah.
I mean, he was pissed, hurt and whatever. But the day that my lawyer let me know that I was free, I think I called you again and said, hey, do you want to produce an album? And
we did that over at George's, right?
Yeah, and that was the Man
funny.
About Town album, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
of
course.
So, and I think at that point you were already working for Marty, right? Or working with Marty?
Probably. I've been doing it for 23 years.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you hook up with Marty originally?
I met him backstage at some awful country music festival. And he probably doesn't remember me from that. But he says he saw me on Austin City Limits with Lucinda Williams.
Right.
And then I was playing an awful gig during the, what do they call it, that festival they had last week. The CMA Music Festival is what they call it now, but I think they still call it Fanfare at this time. I'm not sure, but it was the same thing.
Yeah.
Fan Fest, Fanfare, CMA Music Festival,
All right.
it's always the same thing. And I played some god-awful gig somewhere, and he was there. It was during the day. It's like an afternoon show. It was on Broadway at some place. I can't remember what place it was. I've never been there before or since. It was like maybe a restaurant but it was an actual venue with a stage and a PA and everything when we played there. I don't remember exactly. It was somewhere like between. It would have been between 4th and 3rd on Broadway, but I don't remember what it was. It was like I just went and played and left, but he got my number. And he called me up and we had lunch and he said, I want to start a band, man. And so we did.
Yeah.
It was in 2001 when we started the band.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's been a good thing.
Yeah. That's fantastic. You guys are always working. I mean, it's...
Yeah, we have it's a great situation, he's a great guy to work for, runs a really clean operation. We've had the same crew forever.
Yeah.
Great bus, clean, quiet.
Yeah.
We're the only band I've ever heard of that goes on the road to get rest.
Yeah. Civilized.
It's extremely. One road manager described our bus as freakishly clean. You could take your grandma and her bridge group, her church social group, on there at 1 in the morning, and they'd be like, "Oh, this is nice. This is so nice." And we go out and we get rest.
Yeah, fair enough.
We don't have to do anything, man.
Yeah,
our crew takes care of us.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a small operation, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's streamlined, but it's a good. It's always fun because, he always writes out a set list, but.
Right.
Rarely does he follow it.
Right.
He reads the crowd and decides, well, let's play this song.
Yeah.
He just starts playing some song.
Yeah.
We have at least 150 tunes that he can just start playing. We'll follow in and we know what he's doing.
Yeah. Does he do a lot of songwriting on the road, or?
I think he He writes by himself. I think he does, although I never really see him do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know really where. I think he must write mostly at home.
Yeah.
He's kind of a morning person.
Okay.
And I think that's when he does most of his stuff.
Yeah.
When I'm asleep.
Yeah, fair.
I'm not a morning person. Never was.
Yeah.
But I've written some stuff with him. He's fun to write with.
Yeah.
You know?
Cool.
Yeah, always fun. He's a great guy.
I remember you invited me to, and this is when I think we were maybe talking about working on the next album, and you had invited me to New York to come see you guys play some outdoor show.
Cool.
And then afterwards, you're like, oh, hey, you meet Marty real quick? And I was like, oh, sure, and so you took me on the bus, and Marty was like in his sweats, just like chilling after the show. And then you said, okay, I'll be right back. And it was just me and Marty there. Like,
all right. Sorry about that. Hope I didn't put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. And I was like real square, it's just, I didn't want to mess with Marty at all. And Marty goes into this thing. He goes, you want to see something? And I said, sure. And he pulls out the Johnny Cash acoustic guitar that he had just bought. That was the one that he did. Was it the famous song?
Was it the green Sunburst Grammar guitar that he played on Sunday morning coming down?
No, I think it was another song.
Okay.
But it was like, he's like, well, here, hold it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm left-handed anyway and could barely play my instrument to begin with. But I felt like a monkey. But he's like, well, and he's telling me all about it and how he, came about finding it and stuff like that. Cool. But it was.
Yeah, he has quite a few Cash's things.
Yeah, but he was real sweet to me and all that.
They were best friends,
Yeah, it's crazy.
He was married to one of Johnny's daughters for a while, but even after they got divorced, Marty wound up living next door to him, and he'd come over for coffee.
Yeah.
He'd call him all the time. Hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
They go run around together and whatever.
Yeah.
He has all kinds of great stories about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he worked with Johnny for a couple of years. Well, no, it was like 10 years he was in the band.
Yeah.
Well,
I won't keep you too much longer. I just wanted to ask, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Sure.
And taking the time.
Sure.
But just what would you tell, guitar players coming to town, looking
to Nashville?
Yeah, to have a career or anywhere.
Gosh, I don't know. I suppose what you need to do is figure out what kind of music you want to play and how you want to do it, and get around those people and become their friends and start hanging out with them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about who you know.
Yeah.
In Nashville, it always has been.
Yeah.
That apparently hasn't changed.
Yeah.
I mean, even I'm 70 years old and I'm still, occasionally I'll get called for something, and the next thing you know, I'm part of this guy's regular crew.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody I didn't even know or who it was, and then next thing you know, I'm working for him in the studio. And he calls me again or whatever. That it's sort of there's no real template for success.
Yeah.
Other than to meet people, become friends with people. Hang around people you think are doing the kind of music you want to do, and try and do it. There's so much going on here, man.
Yeah.
I mean, this place is crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been any place like it.
No.
There's a lot of people here, man.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the biz.
Yeah.
And some of them are good.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair.
You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so much music that's on the, that's not really part of the mainstream world here, which is interesting to me.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people I really like.
Yeah.
Like you.
Yeah. Well, good deal.
But there's a lot, you never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah.
I can pretty much say that in the next 6 weeks I'll probably meet somebody that completely blows my mind here in Nashville.
Yeah.
There's always some, I mean, I remember one day I was down at the Musicians Union about 3 months ago, and it was in the afternoon, and I was paying them some money, or they were giving me some money. I don't remember what I was doing at the front desk there. And there's a rehearsal hall, and I could hear the sound of a guitar, and And I was waiting for the guy to do my business science, focused on it. I said, what am I hearing? What are those notes? I had no idea what I was hearing. I had to go in there. I went in, and there's this guy standing there playing an electric guitar plugged into a little amp, and he is blowing my mind. Playing stuff I've never heard anybody play on the guitar. It was like, what are you doing? What is that? You know? Yeah. It sounded amazing. It was like, but I couldn't understand anything he was playing. But it sounded so cool to me. But and he's like, well, you know, I'm taking some of Herbie Hancock's things and put it on guitar. He says, it's a simple thing. And he starts playing this stuff, and my mind is shattered. You know, this guy is killing me. Yeah. I mean, I got his number, you know, and he's just like some guy that, you know, just moved to town, didn't know anybody, you know, and I hooked him up with a jazz guitar player friend of mine. I said, call this guy, he can help you out. You know? Yeah. But the guy was playing stuff that I couldn't wrap my head around it. It was so advanced and so beyond, you know. It was just like, wow. I've got his number. I'm going to get together with him and try and just see if he can convey a little bit about what he was doing to me, because he was doing it right there. You know, I'm standing there watching him, and it's like, I can't believe what I'm seeing or hearing. You know, yeah, I'm standing 3 feet away from the guy, and it's just like, what the hell?
That's wild.
It's crazy.
That's wild that still happens to you. You know?
Yeah. Well, it happened to me. You know, within the last 3 months. I remember driving away from there, just thinking, wow. Yeah. What was that? It's so cool, you know. And I've seen a lot of people play, you know, in my world, you know. Yeah. Like advanced jazz guitar players. I've seen most of them, you know, and this was way beyond anything I've seen. Yeah. I was like, yikes. Yeah. And there weren't any tricks to it. It was just him playing the guitar, you know. Wow. Wild. Yeah, blew my mind. Wild. Well, Kenny, I really appreciate you again taking the time to do this. Hey, thanks for having me over, man. Yeah, and thank you for always being so sweet to me. I really do appreciate it. Hey, it's only because I think you're cool, man. Right on. I like your music. Thanks, I like your songs. Thanks, That's the only reason. Cool. Well, thanks again. Thank you. All right, brother. Well, there you have it, folks. Mr. Kenny Vaughan. Hope you enjoyed that one. Kenny, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and jabber with me. I sure do appreciate it, and thank you again for everything you've ever done for me. I really do appreciate you. Folks, you know where to find us. We're on X, Twitter, and mootdavis.com. Check us out, give us a like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Be cool, and if you're in Wales, say hey. Later.